Tour Guide Tips and Tricks, once again brought to you from my office window while I wait for the internet to come back on. This time we're talking about questions. You are going to get asked a lot of questions as a tour guide. That's your job. Your job is to give information and then answer any questions. But sometimes the questions you're going to be asked can be quite tricky, even if you've been working at your location for multiple seasons or multiple years. Never ever be afraid to say, I don't know. It is so much better to say, I don't know, but I can find out, than it is to give the wrong answer and then to be called out for it. If you're unsure of an answer, say, look, I don't actually know the answer, but this would make the most logical conclusion. Stuff like that. Questions about what you're talking about, they're relatively easy to answer once you know what you're talking about, or once you know which of your fellow staff members you can go to ask the question to see if they can answer it, or provide a resource so that you can answer the question in the future. But you are going to get sticky questions. I imagine it's going to differ from place to place. Sometimes those sticky questions might just be, which pub would you recommend I go to for dinner? This is very political. Don't... you can get yourself into a bit of trouble with that one. So what I usually do is I go, look, this town has so many pubs, they're all so good, I couldn't pick between them, but this pub is catering for this particular group or that particular group, or this pub has this alcohol that I prefer over the others, stuff like that. Or, hey, my cousin owns this pub, so I prefer to go to them to support them, otherwise you might prefer here. Give them options, don't necessarily give them the clear-cut response on that, because that's a political blah 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 you don't want to get into. On the subject of stuff you may not want to get into, sometimes you are going to get bitten by some of your questions. So for example, as you may have picked up already, I work for a dinosaur museum. There are some very interesting questions one can get asked when one works with a dinosaur museum, and often those questions are religious or political in nature. And when people ask you those sort of questions, you have to deflect, because those sort of questions can often be a trap. So what you end up having to do is say, look, I'm really sorry, I have to go do a job. I can't actually answer that question. It doesn't have anything to do to the job. If you have any questions about what has occurred on tour, I'm happy to answer them, but I can't actually answer this question whilst in uniform. It sounds like a cop-out, and sometimes it is, but you don't want to start an argument with your guest. We've had a lot of people come out to the museum who come out specifically to start fights. I've had people ask me my opinion on graziers or grazing, because I often say, look, I'm a local, I grew up on a property. So people ask my political input on things. I'm like, I cannot answer this question. If you see me out of uniform later, happy to answer it, but not while I'm